All right. Yeah. This is a request again to myself because I've been having mad dreams. There's going to be a few dream things happening on the channel because I've been having dreams lately. Not bad dreams. I mean, probably for the last year, every night I dream every night. And I haven't dreamt like that for years since I was little. And I can't work out why I'm dreaming so much. Do you know what I mean? But there must be it's something. Do you know what I mean? But at first they was nightmares, 100% nightmares, where you wake up and do you know what I mean? You're like on edge when you wake up. But now, like, I've all sorts of dreams. Like, so I kind of am now getting interested into dreams and Carl Jung and. But also John Peterson, I find with at least with me anyway, I find he puts things in a way that I can understand. Like I understand him when he talks. Do you know what I mean? Like he has a great way of kind of summarizing things and in a kind of palatable way, which I suppose is kind of his job because he's a professor. Do you know what I mean? He spent his life teaching students, but yeah. First, I'm going to start with this, but then I've got a video on Carl Jung. I just want to do dream stuff. So if anybody's got any dream info or do you know what I mean, knowledge, then do let me know because like I say, I'm having a lot of dreams. A lot of dreams. But yeah, let's see what Jordan Peterson, because this says, what do your dreams tell you about yourself? So yeah, let's go.
I also spent a lot of time reading Carl Jung, and it was through Jung and also Jean Piaget, who's a developmental psychologist, that I started to understand that our articulated systems of thought are embedded in something like a dream, and that dream is informed in a complex way by the way we act. So, you know, we act out things we don't understand all the time. And if that wasn't the case, then we wouldn't need a psychology or a sociology or an anthropology or any of that because we would be completely transparent to ourselves. And we're clearly not.
Mm,
So we're much more complicated than we understand, which means that the way that we behave contains way more information than we know. And part of the dream that surrounds our articulated knowledge has been extracted as a consequence of us watching each other behave and telling stories about it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, extracting out patterns of behavior that characterize humanity and trying to represent them partly through imitation, but also through drama and mythology and
mm,
literature and art and all of that to represent what we're like so that we can understand what we're like. And I see in it the struggle of humanity to rise above its animal forebears, say, and to become conscious of what it means to be human. And that's a very difficult thing because we don't know who we are, what we are, where we came from, or any of those things. And, you know, the life is an unbroken chain going back 3.5 billion years. It's an absolutely unbelievable thing. Every single one of your ancestors reproduced successfully for 3.5
mm.
billion years. It's absolutely unbelievable. We rose out of the dirt and the muck, and here we are.
Well, that's another thing, like, say, with evolution. I find evolution falls down in the same regard as an atheist or an academic would say about Adam and Eve. Because in order for the species to evolve, both male and female has to evolve at exactly the same time, and so that they can bear each other's offspring or whatever. Do you know what I mean? They can recreate. And if I know it happens gradually, but like there must have been the Adam and Eve. There must have been the first two humans that are humans as we know to give birth to everything. There must be. There must be the first two. Otherwise, different lines of the previous species all exactly evolved at exactly the same time. Like, yeah. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. And I know that like people say you can see it in lower, like they've proved evolution in terms of like bacterias and how bacterias evolve. But we nothing in the, what's it, macro? Is it macro? Micro and macro world evolves like that. Nothing adapts like we adapt. We have everything adapts to its surroundings, but that's not evolving. That's adapting. Like yeah. But anyway,
Conscious but not knowing, and we're trying to figure out who we are.
conscious and not
Freud,
knowing.
I
That's a
suppose,
great
in
way of
some
summing it
sense,
up.
started to collate the information that we had pertaining to the notion that people lived inside a dream. You know, it was Freud who really popularized the idea of the unconscious mind. And we take this for granted to such a degree today that we don't understand how revolutionary the idea was. Like with what's happened with Freud is that we've taken all the marrow out of his bones, so to speak, and left the husk behind. And you know, now when we think about Freud, we just think about the husk because that's everything that's been discarded. But so much of what he discovered is part of our popular conception now, including the idea that your perceptions and your actions and your thoughts are all, what would you say, informed and shaped by unconscious motivations that are not part of your voluntary control. And that's a very, very strange thing. It's one of the most unsettling things about the psychoanalytic theories, because the psychoanalytic theories are something like you're a loose collection of living sub-personalities, each with its own set of motivations and perceptions and emotions and rationales, all of that. And you have limited control over that. So you're like a plurality of internal personalities that's loosely linked into a unity. You know that because you can't control yourself very well, which is one of Jung's objections to Nietzsche's idea that we could create our own values. So Jung didn't believe that, especially not after interacting with Freud, because he saw that human beings were affected by things that were deeply, deeply affected by things that were beyond their conscious control. And no one really knows how to conceptualize those things. You know, the cognitive psychologists think about them in some sense as computational machines. And the ancient people, I think, thought of them as gods, although it's more complex than that. Like rage would be a god. Mars, the god of rage, that's the thing that possesses you when you're angry. You know, it has a viewpoint and it says what it wants to say, and that might have very little to do with what you want to say when you're being sensible. And it doesn't just inhabit you, it inhabits everyone, and it lives forever, and it even inhabits animals. And so it's this transcendent psychological entity that inhabits the body politic like a thought inhabits the brain. That's one way of thinking about it. It's a very strange way of thinking, but it certainly has its merits.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
so, and those things, well,
That makes sense. And that makes sense in a way that like you said, brings animals into that spirit. Like, well, I see a dog attack the other day. So, but that dog is like never attacked anybody. And it was just I think, kind of wrong place, wrong time. And a postman got bit by this dog, which shows that that dog, even though it's never attacked anybody, it has that in it, that kind of, like you said, that kind of psychological thing in it, just like every human does and every creature really does. You know what I mean? Even like really the smallest animals have that, like you said, not rage, but attack mode. And they kind of, every creature, yeah, in that circumstance becomes the same thing. It's like where you hear about criminals or people that have done horrendous crimes, they say that it was like, it's animalistic, they're like an animal. Because animals can have that ferocity as well. So yeah, that's interesting.
sense, those are deities, although it's not that simple. And so Jung got very interested in dreams and started to understand the relationship between dreams and myths, because he would see in his clients' dreams echoes of stories that he knew because he was deeply read in mythology. And then he started to believe that the dream was the birthplace of the myth, and that there was a continual interaction between the two processes, the dream and the story, and storytelling. And well, you know, you tend to tell your dreams as stories when you remember them. And some people remember dreams all the time, like 2 or 3 a night. I've had clients like that. And They often have archetypal dreams that have very clear mythological structures. I think that's more the case with people who are creative, by the way, especially if they're a bit unstable at the time, because the dream tends to occupy the space of uncertainty and to concentrate on fleshing out the unknown reality before you get a real grip on it. So it's like the dream is the birthplace of thinking. That's a good way of thinking about it. And so because it's the birthplace of thinking, it's not that clear. It's doing its best to formulate something. That was Jung's notion, as opposed to Freud, who believed that there were sensors, internal sensors, that were hiding the dream's true message. That's not what Jung believed. He believed the dream was doing its best to express a reality that was still outside of fully articulated conscious comprehension. It was, because you think, look, a thought appears in your head, right? That's obvious. Bang, it's nothing you ever ask about. But what the hell does that mean? A thought appears in your head. What kind of ridiculous explanation is that? You know, it just doesn't help with anything. Where does it come from? Well, nowhere. It just appears in my head. Okay, well, that's not a very sophisticated explanation, as it turns out, you know? And so you might think that those thoughts that you think, well, where do they come from? Well, they're often someone else's thoughts, right? Someone long dead, that might be part of it, just like the words you use to think are utterances of people who've been long dead. And so you're informed by the spirit of your ancestors. That's one way of looking at it. And your motivations speak to you, and your emotions speak to you, and your body speaks to you. And it all does all that, at least in part, through the dream. And the dream is the birthplace of the fully articulated idea. Anyways, back to Jung. Jung was a great believer in the dream, and I noted that dreams will tell you things that you don't know. And then I thought, well, how the hell can that be? How in the world can something you think up tell you something you don't know? How does that make any sense? First of all, why don't you understand it? Why does it have to come forth in the form of the dream? It's like there's something going on inside you that you don't control, right? The dream happens to you just like life happens to you. I mean, there is the odd lucid dreamer who can, you know, apply a certain amount of conscious control, but most of the time you're laying there asleep and this crazy complicated world manifests itself inside you, and you don't know how. You can't do it when you're awake. And you don't know what it means. It's like, what the hell's going on? And that's one of the things that's so damn frightening about the psychoanalysts, because you get this both from Freud and Jung, you really start to understand that there are things inside you that are happening that control you instead of the other way around. You know, there's a bit of reciprocal control, but there's manifestations of spirits, so to speak, inside you that determine the manner in which you walk through life. And you don't control it. And what does? Is it random? You know, there are people who have claimed that dreams are merely the consequence of random neuronal firing, which is a theory I think is absolutely absurd, because there's nothing random about dreams. You know, they're very, very structured and very, very complex. And they're not like snow on a television screen or static on a radio. Like, those things are complicated. And then also I've seen so often that people have very coherent dreams that have a perfect narrative structure. You know, they're fully developed in some sense. And so that just doesn't, that theory just doesn't go anywhere with me. I just can't see that as useful at all. And so I'm more likely to take the phenomena seriously and say, well, there's something to dreams. Well, you dream of the future and then you try to make it into a reality. That seems to be an important thing. You know, or maybe you dream up a nightmare and try to make that into a reality, because people do that too if they're hell-bent on revenge, for example, and full of hatred and resentment. I mean, that manifests itself in terrible fantasies. You know, those are dreams, then people go act them out. These things are powerful, you know, and whole nations can get caught up in collective dreams. That's what happened to the Nazis. That's what happened to Nazi Germany in the 1930s. It was absolutely remarkable, amazing, horrific, destructive spectacle. And the same thing happened in the Soviet Union. The same thing happened in China. It's like, we have to take these things seriously, you know, and try to understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of what he said made sense to me then. Like when he said about, the Nazis, how a nation can be swooped up in a collective dream, basically. An ideology is a dream. And like you said, it's something that goes on in your head that you've got no control over. That's what it is with me. Like I have these dreams, and they're not bad dreams, but they give me a feeling inside. Like when I think of them and think of going to sleep, there's definitely a physical feeling that I have, and it's kind of good, but it's kind of not to it. That this is why I want to start looking into dreams, because I feel like my body's trying to tell. Because sometimes it's like say when I first got Nala, and kind of we got over the hurdle of this stranger dog in your house, and you kind of once you kind of build that connection, I would have dreams where people would be giving me dogs, but it wasn't Nala. Go and take this dog, and I'll be like, no, this ain't my dog. Do you know what I mean? So them type of things is obvious. Is obviously because yeah, but then even then it's not that obvious. And like I can remember little kind of flashes of the dream, but they're so real as well at the same time. Even though I can only remember little flashes of dreams, they feel like an experience I've had, and I can feel that experience, the benefits of that experience. But like you said, I don't know what I experienced. It's crazy. But then I suppose animals have them too, because Nala dreams. She's always dreamed. Like, and she definitely has nightmares, because sometimes she's growling, and do you know what I mean? But it starts with her running. Her legs start going. Like you can just tell. But then I looked up on that, and that's when a dog is slipping into deep sleep. Basically, they get that twitching, growling, barking, whatever. That's when they're going into full on REM sleep. But yeah, definitely need to start watching more stuff on dreams, because I do feel like my dreams is trying to tell me something, or trying to, maybe not trying to tell me something, but trying to sort something out in my head that I'm not sure what it's trying to sort out. I don't quite get, like you said, I don't quite understand the what my dreams is on about, but I just feel like it is trying to do something. But like I say, maybe I'm not supposed to be aware of what it is, but I don't know. It's crazy, crazy. But yeah, like I say, more dream stuff will be coming 100%. Try and work out my insanity. But yeah, that's the reaction. Sweet.